The meeting of the Ways and Means Committee is now called to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Cruzen.
Here.
Alderwoman Florida.
Present.
Alderwoman Behringer, Vice Chairman Williamson.
Here.
Alderman Moore, Alderman French, Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Carter, Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
5 present, we have a quorum.
Okay, we are back with our review of the budget and the testimonies from the various departments. We have here today before us St. Louis Development Corporation and then later the Board of Elections. We're taking up the St. Louis Development Corporation first. Mr. Otis Williams.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for having us. Provided a handout to you this morning that provides a brief summary, but also attached to it is the administrative budget for the agency, as well as the personnel schedule for the agency. Overall, total revenue and expense for FY15 is expected to be $7,405,000 compared to $7,253,000 for the approved FY14 budget. This is an increase of $152,000, about 2.1% for FY15. Sort of a recap of what that revenue, the revenue that we have would be. Overall, the CDBG revenue budget for administration in FY15 has decreased by $74,000 in comparison to FY14. The agency contributions to the FY15 budget are the same as FY14 budget. Other revenue increased about $226,000. We expect to increase by $226,000 from the FY14 budget. Overall, the budget revenues for, as you compare FY14 and 15, is about $152,000. The increase of $226,000 actually is an anticipated receipt of fee revenue based on increased fees for both TIF and for tax abatement and for those bonds that we may, for residential projects that we may have in the future. Sort of an expense recap. Personnel cost increased $260,000. Will increase $260,000 in FY15 compared to FY14. And 3 positions have been added under the M&WBE contract compliance program. And the reason that occurs is that we anticipate relocating the compliance section of the DBE office to the SLDC office July 1st. These are positions currently at the airport, but will be transferred to us. The airport will still house the certification component, and the FY15 budget provides $129,000 for support of that certification function. In addition, workforce monitoring will increase by $191,000 in FY15. We currently provide about $130,000 to that function, currently to Michael Holmes's office there. So we will up that by an increase of $191,000. This will allow Slate to obtain the needed software and field support to monitor the workforce components, particularly on the TIF and other related projects. The business development function is budgeted in the same amount as FY14, and if you recall, business development entity, or 10 people on our staff, actually moved to the Clayton office to be combined with what now is called the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. So the line item budgets for other categories did not change, and overall the budgeted expenses are $152,000 higher than in FY14. On staffing, the FY15 budget has 59 positions compared to 55 in FY14. That essentially is the increase of the M&WBE personnel coming to office. And we're adding one intern to our area as well, so that's why we have 4 position increases. So with that, if that completes the summary, and I'm open for questions.
Okay. Questions from members of the committee? Alderwoman Cruzen.
Thank you, Otis. We appreciate the summary. The other revenue going from 2.3 million to 2.565, I believe you said was going to be an increase, anticipated increase in TIF and tax abatement revenue. Is that due to more TIFs and tax abatement, or higher rate, or?
A higher fee rate. Currently, we charge 0.3% for origination, both the SLDC and the comptroller. So essentially 0.6 for each TIF for origination, but also it also involves a 0.2% for servicing for the available balance on a TIF as well. So once a TIF is approved, we get on an annual basis 0.2%. But the increase will be the fact that we will now go from that amount to a full 2% at origination.
A full what?
2%.
So you're going to go from 0.6 to 2%.
That's anticipation. What we're looking at is we are still in the midst of actually going out talking with potential clients or constituents that might be impacted. So we might adjust it a bit, but we anticipate that will be the amount that we will arrive at, and we'll start doing in July.
And is that just established by policy, or?
It is established by the TIF Commission. It will go before the TIF Commission before it's final, yes. And it will be policy at that point.
Okay, so if the, what else is in the 2.3 to $2.6 million?
We generally get sublease revenue from being the agent, if you will, for the space that we all occupy on the second floor. So we get some revenue from that, from the other development agencies that are located on our floor.
All inside money, though, right?
All inside money, yes.
Okay.
We also have, I call it earned income from some assets that we own,
Like
parking facilities and vacant lots and that kind of thing.
So back on the TIF and the tax abatement revenue, if the fee is going up, I guess about 100 and, I don't know, I'm doing this in my head, about 150% from...
About 140 basis points, yes.
From 0.6 to 2, right. So the increase of 1.4 on 6 is, well, I guess it's a lot more than that. It's 230 or 50%, something like that increase. Does that mean that then last year your revenue from TIFs and tax abatement was how much? Somewhere around 80 or 90,000?
On average, over the last 10 years, it has averaged about 50 million. The amount of TIFs has averaged about 50 million per year. And so if you do the percentage on that, that's generally where we are on average.
It was 50, TIFs and tax abatement together were 50 million?
Tax abatement is sort of the number that I just gave you is for TIF only.
Got it. So if it was 50 million, 1% of 50 million would be
500,000.
500,000. And so if you're going up 200%, why is the increase only 226?
Because what happens here is that we now will budget for the workforce component as well as for increased costs with the M&W costs that we were not experiencing before.
That'd be down under the expenses, though, right?
Right, it would be.
Okay, I won't belabor this. Maybe you can give me a rundown of it. I'm not understanding the numbers, but that's
Okay.
fine. Thanks.
Alderwoman Florida.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Behringer.
I'm just trying to find some clarity, so I apologize if this doesn't fall under you.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out who Slate falls under, who monitors Slate.
I don't monitor the entire function, nor do I monitor any of their function. Actually, we're just providing a source of revenue, if you will, for budgeting for the implementation of the MNWBE workforce component. As I believe that was an ordinance that was passed that basically required that we consider doing something like this, and then what we've done now is to basically do that, to increase the fees to be able to provide funds for that function.
So it's a transfer of funds into that agency,
It would be.
and then is there like a report that's sent that says how the funds were spent?
Well, we know what their budget is to do, and so I would assume that the Slate office would provide a report on what they, currently they receive all federal funds, so they are not, I won't say allowed, but they cannot provide specific city services, city-only services, and doing the workforce monitoring was one of those functions that they were not allowed to do. So they needed funds, and this was a way to provide those funds for them to do that function.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'm just, like I said, it was kind of blurry for me, so I couldn't figure out, because I see a lot of funds going towards there, and I'm getting an average of, what, 1 or 2 emails a day saying how much work is out there in the city, so I was like, wow, I was impressed. Thank you.
All right.
That's all I have.
Alderman Williamson.
Thank you. Just had a few questions. The minority contractor compliances positions, are they strictly for the city of St. Louis? I know the merger between the county, do they strictly just monitor the jobs within the city, or do they expand out to other job sites in the county when it comes to?
It is currently just city only.
Okay, so your budget is pretty much separate from the county, what you have here.
For this function, the reason this function exists because of the mayor's executive order.
Right.
And so at this point, and I understand the county is considering doing something, but at this point, it is strictly for the city.
So right now, they don't have any minority compliances officers within the county?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, okay. The expense, the increase of expense, would that have anything to do with, I guess, moving down to 1515 Market and, taking over that building? And I know you guys did a little rehabbing. Is that included
No,
with
it
that?
had nothing to do with that at all.
So do you see it being decreased? Do you think the budget will decrease, or it'll be less of a burden when it comes to expense moving into 1515 opposed to where it used to be?
Well, that happened. In fact, in a few weeks, it will be 2 years now.
Right.
So we've sort of assimilated, if you will, into that function. We do have expenses, but they were contemplated at the time of the move, and I believe that we are on course at this point. So there's no increase, but we do have a set amount that we are required to provide to the city because of the bonds that we use to implement the move, the funds from the bonds.
Okay. LRA, how's that coming along, Otis? Is that, do you feel like we're pretty much at a standstill, and I know the city takes on a lot of those vacant lots, vacant buildings, and becomes a default? Is that becoming more of a burden, or do you think we're pretty much at a standstill when it comes to, maintaining those LRA buildings and lots?
Well, we continue to have an increase just because of the number of buildings that are coming to the agency as a result of the foreclosure process, and so that is still on an increase. So we receive more buildings than we sell or remove from our inventory, so it's still on an increase. we continue to look for ways, if you will, to try and move as many properties as we can from our inventory. And so we're working with each of the aldermen as well as with developers to try and incentivize using those.
So it is increasing, okay. Now, as far as the federal funding that comes down from DC, how much money do you think has been cut from the St. Louis budget that we used to receive? I don't know, do you have any idea when it comes to SLDC, you got any ballpark figures?
Generally, our funds, and I'll have to defer to Fred Wessels on the federal funds because he's the person that receives those funds. But for us, we have a program that we get funds through CDA as well as other entities. And as I indicated, ours has gone down about $74,000 this year. The other federal funds that we get are generally grant funds, specifically for EPA or for other grants that are authorized to help us with implementing certain programs. So we don't really get any funds to assist us with personnel issues.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Alderman Vaccaro?
Just a couple questions, one in particular. The LRA properties that these guys own, the city cuts them. And I noticed that the city forestry budget was cut this year. What do you guys pay to help offset the cost of cutting all these lots?
We provide $225,000 toward that.
But that's not even near enough for the...
No, it's not. But that's what our budget can stand at the moment.
Okay, well...
You know, we do that, but in addition, we provide, we purchase some equipment for them that is over and above that amount as well, so.
Well, this year, if they don't get their funding up, it's going to cut at least 2 pay periods or 2 months of not cutting, which means those lots are going to be growing up. Do you guys have any plan to deal with it, or are they just going to let them grow up?
Well, what happens here is that we obviously appreciate the work that they do on our behalf, but when we do get people who call about the length of grass or whatever, we have a response team that we generally send out to try and address on a call-in basis, if you will. But
So
the way that we've handled it in the past, for the number of years, is that the first cut is generally made by forestry, and for places where they did not get to or there was an issue with what they did, we follow up with the response team.
And is there a number we call for that response team?
Yes.
What's that number?
Actually, it's our office 657-3700, and it's extension YV's number. Okay, 657-3729 is direct, and there's a person there that will take your call.
So if we call there on a vacant lot, and it doesn't seem to be a big problem in my ward, but Sam's ward seems to have a lot of this. So if Sam calls this number, you're going to send someone out? I mean, his concern was, too, that forestry cuts the grass, but there's tires and bricks and stuff that they don't do that's not part of their...
And the follow-up to that is if something like that is uncovered, then call that number.
And they'll send someone out to clean up the lots.
Right. But I remind you, though, is that this is a limited team that is responding potentially to almost 11,000 lots. But we generally can get to almost every one of them out to the calls. And so we have about 7 or 8 people that are in that response mode all over the city.
Okay. I just think we need to come up with a better plan.
Well, money would solve a lot of those issues, and as forestry is limited, we are as well.
Okay. There you go. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman Florida, you have some questions?
Thanks, Otis. I am interested in the commercial district program, and we've gone through many changes in facade. And so, we haven't really received any kind of overview on the new process, except for that we're going to something called a neighborhood improvement commercial grant process, and the facade program is now a large pot of money where it's one like a competitive grant application process. So I have some questions on that, on how that program is running, and how are we supposed to communicate the changes to businesses as they approach us?
Okay. I'm going to ask Michelle Peterson to come up to help me with this one, because she's
You know what I
working
mean,
it-
just
Yeah.
we've gone through some changes, and so I don't even know what the status, I was told last year that there was money left over, and so that it was funded, but not to the tune that it had been in the past. So how do you want us to?
Well, we actually, with the cooperation of CDA, came to the regulations and clarifications of HUD's expectations of how we spend our funding just in the past couple of weeks. So we do have those, and they will be on the website. Much of it is on the website. As to the name, we've always actually been called the Neighborhood Commercial District Improvement Program. People just kind of called it the facade program. So as to the money, we did receive cuts like a lot of CDBG funding, but in essence, the amount of money that we had in previous years is still in our budget for this year. However, what has changed is it's not distributed into ward funds.
Right, and I think we're all pretty clear about that.
Right.
So that part we got. Okay, we went through a lot of change. So do you want the alderman to go to the website to figure out the new?
And I'd be more than happy to meet, now that we do have clarification, to set up a time to meet with any interested alder people.
Or could you just put together a memo and send out the new program so that, because we ran it one way for a very long time. And so businesses still contact us about, and I refer them to our commercial district manager. That's the way I've dealt with it.
Right.
But it would be great if you guys would clarify the new process and get us all on the same page, and kind of set the expectation. What is a strong grant, too? What is a strong grant application, so that as we refer businesses to our commercial district managers, that we're not wasting their time?
Right,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So a strong grant application would look like this.
And that is,
Yeah.
it
And
is
would be
very clear.
50/50 or whatever however you're doing it.
Right,
Yeah.
and that is very clear.
Yeah.
The one thing I would like to take this opportunity, I've talked to many of you about this, the one clarification that is unfortunately affecting some projects, right now it stands at about 25% of applicants, is the environmental requirements for funding. So that is something that has affected, but other than that, we've been able to accept applications and respond to them all with funding consideration. But I'll follow up.
But we will follow up with that memo, so thank you. We will do that.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Alderman Williamson?
Michelle also.
Michelle, could you?
Just a few, Michelle.
Don't sit down yet.
Sorry about that. So there is a total budget for the facade program, and like you said, it's not divided among wards anymore. So
Correct.
will you have that information on the website too also?
Not the total. Actually, we're
Okay.
still working with CDA about some rollovers and that sort of stuff.
Okay. And when it comes to, what kind of inspection did you call it? Environmental inspection? Who performs that? Does CDA, or does SLDC, or do you privately contract that out? How does that handle?
Mark Jeffries with the Planning and Urban Design, Don's been good enough to have that staff person do it, and he has access through computer-based programs as to past uses dating back, don't quote me on that, but I know he's gone as far back as 100 years. I don't know if it goes further, but, and that informs whether more testing or environmental restrictions or requirements are kicked into play.
Okay, and that, we didn't have to have any additional personnel for that. That's somebody that was already on your staff, Don, that's doing that.
Very efficient guy.
Okay,
Yes.
all right,
We're using his talents and his efficiency.
And we were very thankful for his.
okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
I'll just add to that, part of the block grant dollars that planning and design receives is the fund.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Were you complete?
No.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead,
Okay,
continue. I thought you were
I just
done.
would have Alderman Wessels come up. I just wanted to ask him a couple of questions, and then I'm done.
We're going to have him.
Oh,
come
we're
up
going
next.
to get around
Right.
to him. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done.
Do we have any other questions for,
No, I don't.
at this point?
I don't, Mr. Williams.
Do we have any other questions for SLDC at this point from all the people that are present? None? Okay, thank you. We'd like to bring up the Director of the Community Development Agency, Mr. Fred Wessels.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. As you all know, the CDA budget is made up of is not made up of any general revenue funds. It is broken down into two main funds that are represented here in the budget bill, and that is 1164. That is home. It's funded by the home, lead paint, and NSP grants, and 1165, which is the CDBG money. 2015 budget request is $2,558,000. It's down 14% from 2014. The 2015 personnel budget at $2,290,000 is down 2% from the 2014 budget. The primary reason for the decrease in the budget is found in the contractual services, and lease requirements, and it's primarily non-recurring auditing and consulting services that were included in the 2014 budget. We pay the land and building account, it's $175,000. That is the rent CDA pays on the Market Street location. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Alderwoman Cruzen, any questions?
No questions.
Alderwoman Florida?
Nope.
Alderwoman Behringer?
No questions.
Alderman Williamson?
I think he answered my question. So the revenue's been decreased by 2% that we used to receive from the federal government when it comes to funding the CDA. You're saying like it's down 14%, I believe. So that's what, less than what in layman's terms?
Yeah, that's just the 14% is the overall budget request as compared to 2014. The block grant funding for 2014 is down about 2%.
Okay.
And we're not sure, obviously, we won't know until this fall or maybe later what the result will be with block grant in the 2015 year.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro, any questions?
No.
We have all the people who are not on the committee. Any questions? None? Okay, then.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan that is supposed to take place, where are things with that at this point?
This is a 5-year consolidated plan. It's required by HUD obviously every 5 years. This is the year. Even if HUD didn't require it, we're expecting to get over, about $100 million over the next 5 years. That includes the block grant, home funding, the HOPWA money, as well as the emergency shelter grant. So we would want to have a plan anyway. We have hired local consultants to help, as we did 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we paid $250,000 for the consulting plan. This year, we've got a contract for $149,000. We've got some excellent, an excellent team. That is H3 Studio, RISE, and Vector Communications. The citizen participation is going to be greatly expanded. It's like nothing that we have done in the past. It started 2 weeks ago with 5 focus groups spread geographically throughout the city. This week we start the public meetings tomorrow night at O'Fallon Park, 6 o'clock. There's another meeting Thursday, then next Tuesday again. The meetings will be spread 1 south, 1 midtown, and 2 north. We encourage, of course, all the aldermen to participate. We ask that, make sure your folks know about it. We've sent out, and Vector Communications has sent out widespread communication on this. We expect good crowds. Following the public meetings in May, on June 23rd, there will be some theme-based focus groups, and those groups will use the information that's gleaned from the geographic focus groups last week, plus the public meetings this week and next week, and come up with some recommendations on how we and what we should focus on and what our priorities ought to be over the next 5 years. The plan will be completed by early September, and a bill will be submitted to the Board of Aldermen in mid-September.
And that is to be completed by the end of the year, by December, or?
Actually, November.
November, okay.
We need to submit it to HUD by mid-November.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Alderman Williamson?
Just one. When it comes to some of the nonprofit organizations, Fred, do you guys kind of do an evaluation with them at the end of the year to see if they're really, doing their mission statement and really performing the right thing to continue to receive those fundings from CDA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have program monitors and fiscal monitors that do just that.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could,
Sure.
I would add, just to make sure everyone understands, there is roughly there's $1 million in the facade improvement program for the current, the upcoming, of CDA funds for 2014. That is less than last year, about $500,000 less than last year. The reason is money wasn't spent. There was $300,000 or $400,000 that was unspent in loan money last year. There is plenty of money. There will be plenty of money available from prior years if the loans come in and if there's a need for it. So I want to assure you that funding won't be a problem.
I believe that completes this.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Mhm. The next bring up Don Rowe.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Pleasure to be here on a Monday after a glorious weekend. So we're here for the Planning and Urban Design Agency, which is Department 141. So we're a city agency, as you recall. Our employees are therefore all civil servants. And our budget is comprised of 2 things, or at least this year it's comprised of two sources: the Community Development Block Grant and general revenue. As you may recall, those 2 budget years overlap. One's on the calendar year and one's on the city fiscal year. And so I'll just talk a second about last year. And last year we had 3 funding sources. We had the Community Development Block Grant. We had a humble amount of general revenue, we're appreciative of. And we also had funding from a regional sustainability grant that went to East-West Gateway that the city was a portion of. So part of our staff was paid for by that regional sustainability grant. So as I look and come here before you for 2015, part of what you see before you is, one, that we no longer have that HUD regional sustainability grant contributing to us. And second, our life gets a little bit more complicated because of the overlap of the two budget years. So this year, we're asking for, and you'll see in the budget request for you, is that we up the general revenue provided to planning and urban design. So that is very much appreciative. I'm here to ask for that, hope for your positive recommendation that we would do that. And it really does a couple things. One is we've been steadily, as we've known from the block grant, steadily getting chipped away. So for a number of years, we've been tightening and tightening and tightening our belts. And also we had the employee, the primary employee, there's others that were paid for it, the community, out of the HUD sustainability grant. There's only enough funding in the block grant for partial of the year for those folks, for that situation. So part of what we're telling you, or what I'm telling you, is that the budget that you see before you retains the person that was on the HUD sustainability grant, otherwise would go away, and some other shortfalls. So in essence, what we're doing is we're changing the ratio of block grant and general revenue over the course of the next year. Remembering that goes all the way to July of 15. Block grant will be renewed again in January to some level. And keeping some folks that otherwise would be subject to a shortfall from this year's block grant funding. Prime in my heart for that is the urban designer that we have on staff, in that she's been away from us in a way because she's been working exclusively on the HUD Regional Sustainability Grant. So she's back in the fold to help us on our day-to-day activities, which is related to urban design and visualizing what part of our community are. So I appreciate that we can do this with this increase to $512,000 from general revenue. I appreciate that we can deal with our otherwise are a little below having enough block grant to get through the year, and then it also, because it's a 12-month budget, will fund positions into calendar year 15. So those are important things, I think. I think the net is, if I held up a table of organization to you, is by doing this, we have no real changes to the table of organization. So we can continue to do services, particularly pleased to have the urban design capability not tainted by just working on the HUD Sustainability Grant, and I'll leave it at that.
Questions from members of the committee? Alderwoman Cruzen.
Thanks, Don. The numbers that we're seeing in the line item details show a total planning department budget of, I don't know what, is it 512 or is it 980?
It's twofold.
Okay.
It's a combination of the two, and there's an overlap for part of the year.
Okay. So in total, did I hear you say that your budget for this year in total is the same as last year, or is it more?
It's a little more than last year.
Okay. Okay, thanks. No further questions.
You're trying to figure it out based upon how it's illustrated in the book.
I don't get it, but
I will-
I'll ask Don later.
Yeah. And I should be, as I'll make these notes. One, over the course of the years, we're a little shy in senior management positions and talents, and we're trying to be lean in our support staff situation. So one of the things is I borrow talent, and I'll say that in helping me with the block grant funding, Brian Yoakum of Fred's staff is always a helpful aid, and Ken Schultz from the budget division is always a helpful aid to help me do that.
Alderwoman Florida.
So 6 positions are funded off of general revenue, 1010, and,
In part, yes.
how?
Yes, in part.
In part. Well, yes, because 50%, well, okay, yeah, we do understand that, okay. But your total number is 6 on general revenue, and then how many positions off of 1165? Another,
We have a total of in this year, 18.5 positions.
okay, total 18.5, and so 12.5 are on the grant budget, right?
Right. Some of them, remember, there's a split, that overlap in some of them.
Okay.
And to make matters just a tad more complicated, one of our staff members is paid both out of PDA's budget and out of IT's budget.
Okay, PDA and IT.
So
Okay, so that other position comes out of IT too?
yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
And so you're retaining a HUD, the person who is working on the HUD sustainability?
She worked for us prior also.
Okay, who is that?
It's Connie Tomasula.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Alderwoman Behringer.
Hi, Don.
Good morning.
I just want to make sure I understand this. So if I do, because I want to make sure you have money. You know I love your department. You are asking, your request was for 1.199. You were given 969, so you actually have a gap, correct?
Yes, as you hear the tone. Remember, we get re-upped with block grant, hopefully, potentially desirable in January. So it's the overlap of the years that makes us a little bit more complicated.
Right, so you are not lacking funding to do your job?
We're not lacking funding to do our job. This maintains exactly as we are. With that exactly as we are, the urban design position, which was on another budget, which we have no longer funding, and that's a good thing.
Right. Like I said, your department is proactive, not reactive, so that's why I want to make sure you have your money. That's it, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Williamson.
No question.
Alderman Vaccaro.
No questions.
Okay. Any other questions from any other people who are not on the committee? Okay. None? Okay. Are there any other follow-up questions from members of the committee? You sure? Okay. All right, then. I believe that completes us.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question of someone else?
No, we were just talking.
Oh, okay. All right, then I believe that completes us. Thank you very much. We have 15 minutes before our scheduled next. Let me see if they're ready.
Yes.
Would,
I did, and I was checking on it, that's why I was doing it.
okay. Thank you. Let me check to see if they're all here. I see some.
Thank you.
Are they ready? They're ready. Okay.
Morning. Thank you.
You're welcome. Here you go. And someone's here. Joe here.
She's there.
Alderman Carroll. Everybody.
Yep.
This is for the e-poll books.
Oh, okay, I mean, we used it in Ward 13 in that special election?
Yes.
Oh,
So it worked out marvelously.
yeah. Okay, now we just need money.
I know.
Right.
Sent it to, I guess, the different people who are doing it.
Right. Right.
And then they sent that to me.
Right. Right.
So,
I agree with you. There's just,
so you really want us to go online and look up this information?
they're just in the wrong place.
Well, I'm just saying there's got to be.
And there is.
Okay, change the way that we're doing this.
That's your copy. I'm aware of several members missing that support us a lot. Yes, you want me to? Sure, not a problem.
We'll resume the meeting with our presentation from the Board of Elections Commission.
you ready?
I believe we're ready now. Yeah, he's right here.
Okay,
Please.
good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you, Chair, and the board members for allowing us the opportunity to come before you to talk about why we think we need the electronic poll books for the voters and the voting process. What we just passed out, some of you all received this the last time we were here presenting the e-poll books a couple of weeks ago, and this is our amended allocation request for the e-poll books. And basically what it says is that we originally requested all of the poll books from the city budget, and we realized that you have restraints. So we found some money in our election management fund where we were able to purchase 120 poll books out of our own funds. And then we went back again and discovered we can also buy the accessories that are also needed out of the same fund, but we are not able to purchase the full amount of poll books that we need out of this election allocation funds, but we can purchase the carrying cases and the backup batteries. And so that reduced the amount that we're requesting from the city to approximately $210,000. The exact amount is $209,600. So that's what this first sheet you received has on it. And as a result of having an election on April 29th for Ward 13, we were able to do some surveys from the poll managers or the poll workers and from the voters as they came in and used the e-poll books, which we debuted at the special election, and we got such wonderful results, and all that's in there, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Overall, it was all positive feedback. I mean, the poll workers loved it, the voters loved it, it expedited the whole voting process, and we got, as I said, you can go through this at your leisure and see the kind of results and comments that were made regarding that. The last page, actually, well, there's another page also where our intent is to introduce the poll books to the community, and we have a page in there that tells you the different ways and different outlets we're going to use to introduce the poll books, such as the libraries, the public schools, the City Hall Rotunda, social services, Yeah, all kind of meetings that we're being invited to right now to talk about voting process and registration. And we also have a great relationship with the League of Women Voters and all the disabled communities, so we'll be introducing the e-poll books that way as well. As you know, the 120 have now will only cover approximately a third of the voters in the city of St. Louis, and without the full coverage, we may only be able to use the e-poll books on special elections because it'll be kind of logistically difficult to figure out how to just put 120 out in a major election like we have coming up in August and in November. So we do have some figures in the back, which is the cost of what the signature rosters and the voter history updates, what all that would cost comparatively. And initially we put in our budget that for 7 elections it would cost us $12,817 if we were used the way we've been doing it with printing in-house and getting the paper and the books put together. And
I'm sorry, it's this amount, the total first.
okay. You know what, I'll let did Betty put all that together, so, oh, okay. My part I was studying on, I know all this, but I'll let her talk about the budget part of it.
Okay.
And Betty is our deputy director.
Good morning, thank you. As Mary had mentioned, this last sheet kind of breaks it down in from the February 2012 elections to April 2013. On the last page, you will see the total cost for those 7 elections was $170,991. We also went ahead and did figures for the fiscal year of 2015, which would include 4 elections. That would be $119,320, because some of the cost for 2015 have increased. Our temporary worker pay went from $8 to $10, and there's some other costs in there as far as increase in toner cartridges and some paper, you know, et cetera, that what it takes. Do you want to do some of these talking points?
No. Excuse me. Do you have any questions thus far regarding what we just told you of the costs? And did you all get a chance to experience the e-poll books when we brought them over here a couple weeks ago to see how quickly it moves?
Or do you still have more in your presentation to give us?
Just a few.
Just a few talking points that we were going to tell you about.
Let's do that, and then we'll go through the questions.
Okay, I think Gary has something to add.
Good morning. I apologize. I thought we were at 10.
You were at 10. We're just early.
Nice of you to let us go early. You're all familiar, of course, with our precinct register. You've all probably had the experience. And I just wanted to sort of remind you and share with you the difference. I mean, you can see the difference between this and the poll pad. But even the best of our poll workers, when the voter comes in, they have to present some form of ID, and the poll worker has to do this. And even if they're quick, they have to find the right, so you're familiar with that, and our workers sometimes are elderly and have a difficult time sort of getting there quickly. One of the beauties of the poll pad is that you don't have to do the flipping through. There are 3 types of identification. One is your permanent voter ID card, the other is a driver's license, and the third is the voter notification card that has a scanning mechanism on it. So the poll worker simply puts that behind the poll pad. It automatically pulls up the voter's name. And even if they don't have one of those forms of ID, the poll worker can enter it in manually, but doesn't have to do the whole name. They can just do so many letters, and it will automatically pull up. So I think you can sort of appreciate how easily that's done. We no longer would have the A through K and the L through Z lines, because the poll pad has the entire database on it. So a voter coming in can go to any poll worker at that table. And then the third benefit, I think the ladies have talked about, the cost savings. We will spend an average of $30,000 per election on paper and people. Once we purchase the poll pads, we won't have that. And the other benefit is come post-election, instead of the usual 3 to 4 week turnaround time having to scan information into the database, the poll pad will do that automatically. It'll automatically download the voter history into the MCVR. So there are multiple benefits, and we understand that there are only so many dollars to go around, but this would be sort of a one-time investment in speeding up the voter process. Sorry.
So that pretty much sums up our presentation. Also, you'll notice on the first sheet I gave you that the first year of the licensure is waived, so we won't have to pay that until next fiscal year, 16.
All right, questions from members of the committee. Alderwoman Cruzen?
Thank you. So I noticed that the sample that you had for, from the April 29th election was pretty small, 7 people responding, 10 people responding, that sort of thing. Was that just the poll workers, or?
No, actually, we have 2 in here. One is the poll workers' response, and the other one is the actually voters' response.
Oh, maybe
The first one says poll worker e-book survey results.
And then this is voters. Okay.
Right, and the next one says that.
All right, so you had 100 people responding and similarly positive results.
Exactly. We had a bigger response than we thought, so we were pretty pleased with that.
And so you need 212,000 additional in this year's budget in order to implement the electronic poll books for the March election, or for the August election?
Right. Actually, we need 262, and that will cover for the August, November, and the spring elections.
Okay, thought
That would enable a citywide rollout covering all our polling places.
262.
and
I
all
just
our
heard a number of 209 something.
Oh, that was
so
the amount. The amount we need is $209,600, and that would purchase 262 more poll books.
Oh, I see. Okay, so 210
Yeah,
is the
approximately
amount,
210.
is the dollars that you need to purchase an additional 262 poll books.
Correct.
And how many have you already purchased?
120. And also it says we will purchase the batteries that are needed and the carrying cases, because they have to be
Yeah, I'm
transported.
sure it says it in this, but
Right.
I just got this, so I
No, that's
didn't-
okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew that it is in there.
Okay. And is this software system and poll book, is this used somewhere else in this region?
Yes, quite a few places. St. Charles County has it. Franklin County, I think, has it. Jefferson County, and a few more counties, plus out of state. They just are in Florida and a few other states as well. The vendor that we chose.
Oh, has installations in Florida.
Right, exactly. But quite a few of the jurisdictions in Missouri have them.
And who's the vendor?
No Ink.
No Ink?
No Ink.
Clever. And is there an annual maintenance contract on these? These are going to
Yes.
get dropped, they're going to, the software's going to have issues or whatever. I mean,
Exactly, there
it's
is.
just-
And it's been waived, the fee for the annual licensure has been waived until next fiscal year, but there is an annual licensure fee on it, and then there's the maintenance that's part
And
of the
how
contract.
much is that annually?
$38,200 if we got all of the, it's $100 per unit
I see. Per year, $100 per unit.
per
Okay.
year.
And the first year's included.
Yeah, and this first year, we didn't have to pay for, so we
Right,
only
I
paid
got
next
that,
year. Okay.
yeah. And what is the expected useful life of these? They're like iPads or something, I guess,
Exactly.
right?
I think at least 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the backup when, one of them's on two of them in the same polling place are on the fritz or whatever? Because this thing doesn't work all the time.
Right, exactly.
Those aren't going to either.
Exactly. Well, our intent is, of course, to move away from having the roster books out there, but we always have the precinct sheets that you all come and buy sometime, the precinct sheets, so we'll have precinct sheets as a backup in the polling places as well, per precinct.
And is there any connection between these electronic poll books and electronic connection and downtown, say?
No, we're not using internet for this.
Okay.
Well, hopefully one day we will, but we want to not introduce that immediately.
So if there's a problem, they'll just have to call the hotline number at...
Right, they call the command center, and we'll be able to handle it from there.
Okay.
We also have roving backup people in the field throughout the city on Election Day, and they'll have backup poll pads, not for every polling place, but enough where they can cover a particular problem that would occur.
Right. So if you get the additional $210,000 in the budget, it'll be available July 1st, I guess, which is when the new budget money is available. And will you actually be able to get all of these in and use them all on August the 5th?
Yes, we talked to the vendor about that, and that's the intent, and they said they could do that.
Okay. Well, it'll be good to start out with what's likely to be sort of a low turnout election, right?
Right, well, yeah.
I mean,
We did that April 29th.
yeah, that was a really low turnout.
Really low turnout, right. We always anticipate high and hope high, you know.
Of course,
Right,
we
of
all
course.
hope high, but, yeah.
And you might talk to your newest colleague and see,
Yeah.
and see how she and her fellow voters
Yeah.
enjoyed.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's, seems like a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, no further questions, thanks.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Florida, any questions?
How many voters voted in that election? 600 or?
About right under 700.
Right under 700. Okay, thank you. Lyda asked all the good questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Lyda.
All right.
Alderwoman Behringer?
Okay. I know I'm dealing with the digital divide in my ward, so I can't imagine it's not happening in the other wards, which has to do with those who don't use computers and those who do. And so when this survey was taken of the people who use them, did you get the demographics of them, as in their age?
No.
Okay, so we don't know who
Well,
replied.
but in fairness, it's actually the poll worker who uses the poll pad, not the voter.
Right.
All the voter's doing is confirming that's who I am, and with a stylus,
Okay.
writing their signature. But in terms of their ease and convenience of being processed, that's really what their survey was designed to gauge.
So
they don't have to touch it?
No, they just sign on it. But I can tell you this, the poll workers varied in ages into seniors and young people and middle age, and they were very excited by it. I mean, we have poll workers in their late 70s and early 80s who were.
Granted, a small sampling, but when we brought them in even for training from the vendor, they were excited about the prospect. And even those who were a little bit sort of reticent to start with, when they got their hands on it and could actually use it, their reaction was, gee, this is easy, I can do this.
Okay, and then with the equipment, how many polling places are there in the city of St. Louis?
120.
Okay, so then you're expecting to have 3 per polling place?
Well, we have 222 precincts.
Right, and depending upon sort of the number of registered voters per precinct, that will determine how many poll pads are actually assigned to a precinct. So one that has more registered voters will have a cutoff of, for example, if there are 1,200 registered voters, then we'll bump up to 2 poll pads. If there are 1,800 registered voters, we'd bump up to 3.
So
Yeah,
we're purchasing based on precincts, not so much as polling places. The physical building is one thing, and then the number of precincts in that polling place is another.
Okay.
So like Gary said, it'll be based, we go through and determine the number of voters per precinct, and then determine how many will go out. The same way we do with the electronic machines, how many will go into a polling place on big elections versus small.
And that would be the same also for the paper, but the difference then would be depending upon the size. We may have to have 2 and possibly 3 to break this thing down further, whereas with the poll pad, you don't have to do that. You don't have to have the A through K, L through Z.
Okay. And then the other thing was, and I've brought this up before in the 16th Ward, we took polling places that were fully handicap accessible, and then we moved them into buildings that while they are handicap accessible, you have to go to the back of the building, you have to go up one thing, then you have to get into one elevator, then get off that elevator, then get on another elevator to get into the actual gym to vote. Versus the 2 schools that we had, you can go right in. They're both handicap accessible. So I am still getting complaints on that from my elderly. Because if we're going to have a big turnout in August or a next election, the lines were so long at the one school that they were standing on the steps on the outside of the building. So we've got to readjust somehow, if we're going to have, good turnout, how that works in the 16th Ward.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have Ken get in touch with you to see how we can work that. I know some schools close, some public schools, some people didn't want to be polling places anymore, but it was never our intent to disenfranchise any voters. So if anything we can work out with you, we will.
Okay. And then the very last thing had to do with the budget. And my question had to do with, under professional services, I was trying to find out where the legal fees come in.
Under that, professional services?
Okay.
And we've reduced our legal fees a lot under this new board.
Okay. Yeah, I see the request and then I see the fiscal year budget. So I was just curious. So that's what that is. That's it. I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Williamson.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, how you
Gary.
doing?
I think this is an excellent idea. So the total cost is $209,000 for 262.
Correct.
Am I clear on that? So do we presently have 120 of these e-books now?
Yes, we purchased 120 out of our elections fund.
Okay. So over the period of time, I guess we will have a savings, like you said, with the printing and the paper and
Exactly.
those type of things. Now, do you perceive a problem of, some of us are really not computer literate? So have you guys kind of looked into that when it comes to the demographics, who you're going to hire to really go deal with this and be able to run these e-books? Do you perceive a problem of?
No.
Because, we get a lot of seniors, you know that.
Right.
A lot of seniors really have a problem with dealing with computer and technology, so.
Actually, we took all that into concern, and we've actually have done some, what do you call those sessions where?
Roundtable discussions.
Roundtable discussions where we brought in people from different demographics and different areas to introduce it to them and get their feedback on it. And like I say, they were very receptive to it. So, and I don't even think age has been a barrier because it's so easy to use. You either come in, you do it manually where you look up somebody and we tell you how to do that, or you just give them your voter ID card or your driver's license or your voter ID that has the barcode on there, and it's all simple. So they were very receptive to it.
And keep in mind, these are the poll workers, which I recognize is a entirely different kind of demographics, as opposed to the voter themselves. And the poll workers will be doing one-on-one, hands-on training with them in preparation for the upcoming elections. And the ones that we had in for the first training session for the 13th Ward, they all took to it immediately.
And we have a practice makes perfect, so you can stop by the office anytime and practice more on it if you want to.
So will it be an increase of pay, or will they be considered the same pay as they normally get if they were just filing through the booklet?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I put in the budget more pay for the poll workers, but that got taken out, so. And they've never got a raise. We are one of the lowest paying jurisdictions for paying our poll workers, and they never got a raise when we brought in the new electronic machines. So unfortunately, I know the budget doesn't allow for that right now, but we would like to look for that in the future to be able to pay our poll workers a little bit more money.
And the poll pad will actually facilitate what they do on Election Day. They have all their other duties, but in terms of wandering through that and putting down the number sticker and having to initial the number sticker,
right.
Yeah, they won't have that.
Now, when we have these federal elections, like I guess coming up in 2016, when the president runs or what have you, so you're going to have a lot more people voting. And Alderwoman Barrington brought up kind of a good question. Will you have these large polling places where you get a large turnout? I know the 6th precinct and the 26th ward seems to be a real high voting precinct. So will you have like maybe 2 of these e-booklets there so you can, kind of speed the traffic through? I know this e-booklet's fast and it's straight to the point, but if you got a long line, is it possible to have 2 of those type of?
Oh, we'll have more than that if needed, like we were telling Alderman Behringer. It depends on the number of voters in each precinct, how many e-poll books will go in that one precinct. So it will be increased. Yes. Okay. And you can even walk with those through the line and check people in too.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you walk through the line, do they scan their card too? Then but they still have to stand in line to vote. So how does that work?
Well, that's because the good thing we do have to blend it too, because if you don't want to wait to use the machine, you can get a paper and go into your corner or wherever we have set up and vote paper if the lines are too long for the touchscreen. The touchscreen could be the reason the line could be long if everybody wants to use that. But a lot of people say, well, give me the paper, and I'll go over my little corner and I'll mark it up on the paper ballot.
Was it a savings on the mailing of the voter registration card? That's a one-time deal now, right? So we no longer will receive notification upon elections?
Oh, no, you will
or-
still receive that.
Okay.
That's by law, state statute, we have to notify you per election, so we'll still receive those. And the
Okay,
good thing
very
about
good.
the way we do it, when we can, we do a sample ballot on there, so you can bring that into the polling place and you can mark it up before you come in. But that's state statute, so you'll still receive those.
And that also has the barcode on it.
That
Right,
was my question.
exactly.
Will the scanner be on there too?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. It's on there now. We did it for the April 2.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Just a couple more questions that I have. Now, the insurance on these e-books, how does that work? I think Alderwoman Cruzen kind of asked about that. Was that the $100? How does that work?
The
in order to
licensure,
insurance, if you damage it, can you replace it? You know what I'm saying? If one
Right.
gets dropped, one burns out.
Well, those are two
what is
different
the
things. Now,
cost?
the annual license fee runs approximately $100 per poll pad. That's included in the first year, and for fiscal years 2016 and 2017, we would build that into our budget.
Right.
We have, as part of the agreement, a maintenance agreement. Now, if we simply drop the poll pad and it breaks, that's on us, but we would have some extra in the amount that we're going to buy. And then as we get past this upcoming fiscal year, we'll have an opportunity, if we find that we need to replace some, to build that into our 2016 and 2017 budget. I would also just add the point that you raised relative to the long lines at the voting places. We're currently in the process of evaluating all of our polling places, and the gentleman who's in charge of the department that does that is here today, Ken Franklin, and the point is we are looking at every polling place, both to cover your concerns about using polling places that are readily accessible to all voters, but how we can physically lay the voting pattern out so that even though people get through this part quickly, they have an opportunity to either quickly vote the paper ballot, or if they have time to wait in line, to vote on the touch screen, but to have that sufficiently spread out and well marked so that voters know they can move through in a timely fashion.
Okay, good. So how long does this contract last with e-books? It goes until, you say, 2017?
The three-year contract.
Three-year contract?
Yes.
Okay. So I know it's a little ways down the road. Do you foresee if you have to upgrade and get new pads, do you getting a better deal than what you're paying right now? I mean, once you kind of get a contract with them now, do you think that they'll give you a break 3 years from now on some new pads? I mean,
The
at a
software
lower
may get
cost.
upgraded, the poll pads may stay the same, because I
Right.
don't know if you have a e-poll pad now, if you have one or two, it still works, but the software may be upgraded. But yes, the person we chose for a vendor, I'm sure we can get whatever we need for a discount.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a former election director in our office.
Very good, very good.
And we had a
Well,
very good sort of working relationship as we were negotiating the contract. Now, we fully expect for him to make a fair profit as well, but he also understands our needs, the city's needs, and I think he wants us to succeed as much as we want to succeed.
Good, great. Yeah, they came up to the Board of Aldermen, they did a presentation in our conference room, and Ken Franklin was here, and they did a good job. I was impressed.
We were all here.
Okay, you were?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't see it, okay. I miss Mary and Gary, I apologize, okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro?
Just a, actually, pretty simple question. If the expanded voting happens, and the e-books are out there, and the voting goes on for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, are these books kept separate, or is it something that somebody can call and say, I'm just curious who all voted so far, so you can keep working your voters?
Well, actually, the e-poll book will actually facilitate in the sense that the e-poll book will have the entire voter registration database, registered voters in the city of St. Louis. Now, for each precinct, it will be specifically geared to that precinct so that you can't, got to be at the right table still. But because it is capable of handling the entire citywide database, those that are sent out for early voting
Right.
will contain the entire citywide database, and we'll have the capability. And once you vote, I don't know if you had a chance to see it when we had the demonstration here. Once you actually vote, the system will not let you vote again, because if you come back like the next day, go to a different location, and you give them your card, your name will come up, but it'll be highlighted to reflect the fact that you already voted, and the poll worker, even if they wanted to, the system won't let the poll worker go beyond that point, and they would say, gee, Mr. Vaccaro, looks like you voted, and it'll tell the date and the time that you voted.
Well, I mean, but will that, I guess what I'm getting at, will they keep those books during that period of time private somewhere? Because again,
the security?
if I've called all my voters and, oh, we're going to come vote for you, and Mary says she's voting for me, Gary says he's voting for me, I know on election day you're always looking to make sure, hope that the people said they're going to vote for you come out that morning. My question is, so if they're not kept private, then you can call and see that Mary or Gary didn't vote, and then, you know, that's what I'm saying. Will these books be kept, will they, tablets be kept somewhere so somebody can't get to them or use them to their advantage?
Well, the law still hasn't changed where we can't give out information to you about who voted until, well, we don't tell you who, we just tell you that information the Friday before the election after 8 o'clock in the morning. So no information will be given out of that type. And then the security, yes, we'll secure these. We're already preparing for our security methods now. Well, we know we're going to keep them when they come in, and then see how this early voting goes, and then we'll work on the planning for the security of that too.
But the answer is yes, they will be secure, whether it's the 6-day early voting period that the legislature passed that's subject to a vote in November,
Right.
or even if it's a broader 6-week, those particular poll pads will be kept secure, and candidates can always, parties can still have challengers in the polling place checking off, Gary came in, oh, where's Mary?
Except for multiple days. I just was concerned.
No,
I would hope they'd be kept private.
They will be, yes.
Okay, that was my exciting question.
The security is important, yeah.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Alderwoman Behringer?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought of a couple things. I just want to make sure that before we get to the 2018 voting where we have a presidential election, which unfortunately turns out more people than any other election, is that, and I'm sure this isn't unique to the 16th Ward, I have an area of the 16th Ward that actually has Webster Grove zip codes. And so when they come to vote, they're only allowed to provisionally vote. So, and I think it's because there's students in there, so they're new to the area. But I just wanted to make sure that if there's any areas of the city where we have county zip codes, which we do, I have it multiple places in the 16th Ward, that they get to actually vote, not provisionally vote, because there is a difference. The other thing was, I need to make sure that the booths that let people who are blind vote are working before at every election, because that's a big thing in my ward. I have some people, and so it's not been working the last couple times. And I'm just saying that because I want to make sure it's on record.
Oh, sure.
Because I deal with it every election, so.
Well, and I would say two things about that. Where the machines are concerned, those are tested before every election, and fortunately, the gentleman in charge of those departments is here today. And so we try our best to make sure they are in fact working. Any voter who is registered in the city of St. Louis, student, whomever, even if their mailing address is a county zip code, is going to be allowed to vote in the city. And if they're registered in the city and they show up at their correct polling place, absolutely, they'll get to use the poll pad and they'll get to use the electronic voting machine.
Yeah, like I said, it's very goofy, and I don't understand why we go through it every presidential election, but they get to vote provisionally.
Well, even if they voted provisionally because they weren't in the roster, or when that provisional ballot gets back, we still check it thoroughly to see if they are registered voter in the city, and their vote does count.
Okay, I'd always been told provisional votes are never counted.
Oh, no. Oh,
Until
no.
at a federal level.
No, that's not true. That's the purpose of the provisional ballot, is that it comes back to our office. They're getting a little sticker so they can call and check and see if their vote counted. And then we check that, all that information that's on there, and we do extra checking to make sure that person is a registered voter. And if they are a registered voter, their vote counts. Absolutely.
All right, I've been told differently at the state level.
Well,
Okay.
and part of the theory behind provisional voting is that way, if there's some question, the voter doesn't have to wait 15, 20 minutes, and the line doesn't have to wait while that's being reconciled. They are immediately handed off to someone who will do the paperwork so they can vote provisional. Their ballot is sealed inside an envelope. There's a tear-off stub that they get that has a number that compares with the number on the envelope. When the envelopes come back down, and not that night, but that week, we go through every envelope. We verify if the voter is registered. If they are, then we take the ballot out and count it. If they're not, we don't count the ballot, but we'll use the information to register the voter to vote the next time. And if the voter is interested and wants to call that number, we can look at our records and tell them if their vote counted, and if not, why not.
Okay, great. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee? You did say that in this amount that you're requesting to get the pads, that there were some additional ones, some extra, or are these the exact number?
No, well, that'll cover not only every precinct, but will give us some in reserve so that in the event one goes down on election day, we can immediately
Just deliver another. Okay. Any other questions from all the people who are present, not on the committee? Alderman Williamson has another question.
Now, are they calibrated, the e-books, just for that precinct, or they're citywide? How does that work? Or do you kind of program them just for that particular ward and precinct, what a ward anyway? Is that the way, or is it a citywide type of a?
Well, all the registered voters in the city are on the e-poll books.
Okay, so
But for a given precinct, it will also be programmed only to process voters in that precinct. So if you go into the wrong polling place and they don't find you being in that precinct, they will know from the poll pad your correct ward and precinct, and then can immediately direct you to your correct polling place without having, wait a minute, I got to call the command center. And
so if one breaks down in the 26th ward and you got an extra one in the 6th ward?
Well, no, we'll have the roving deputies going around. We'll have extra ones if needed.
Okay.
Right.
And so you guys are calibrated or programming it?
And our understanding from the other jurisdictions that are already using these e-poll books, none have broken down.
Okay.
And we won't be the first either.
Okay, very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Behringer.
I apologize. I just had one more question, because the first thing that came to my mind was that if we do go to the e-poll, we go to this, that means we'll move faster. And my assumption is, so please confirm, was that we would need less workers, so we could take the money that was from having more workers from the old way and put it into giving higher salaries to current workers.
No, by statute, we still have to have this equal number of Democrats and Republicans in the polling place, and then they're by precinct. So you'll have a Democrat and Republican in this precinct, a Democrat Republican in that precinct, and then we usually have one set of poll managers for the whole polling place. So it doesn't change the number of workers that are needed.
Okay, all right.
And
Thank you.
when we determine the number of workers we need, it's based on the number of registered voters in that particular precinct. So, I mean, as an example, if there are, say, 1,500 registered voters, instead of just having the one team with one poll pad or with one registered, we'd have two. Now, the voters wouldn't have the A through K, the L through Z, but they could go to either, then instead of poll workers, get processed that much faster.
But as we get more electronically advanced and people start voting from their phone, well, this isn't a phone, it's a mobile unit. When I start voting from here, then we aren't going to need as many people actually at polls.
Oh, yeah, when that day comes, yeah.
Well, I'm just, in my head, I'm saying at some point we're going to not have that many.
No, right, that's visionary, yeah. We'll be back about that.
All right, thank you.
I believe that, any other questions? No other questions? I believe that completes us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. That takes care of our agenda today. We're back tomorrow at 9 a.m. with the Personnel Director, Collective Revenue, and then Public Utilities. Yeah, they make 209. This adjourns our meeting. Thank you.